gosh. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know how you do it. I feel so much better.
The last 3 years have been a period of unprecedented uncertainty. I think we all can relate to that. And it seems it's not over yet. Obviously, this has its impact on customer behavior, or the insurance sector, and virtually everyone in the insurance community. Now, the question is how to deal with that uncertainty. The answer? Resilience. We asked Stephen Mendel, the CEO and founder of ManyPets, to share how he built and nurtures resilience. Please welcome him on stage, Stephen Mendel.
Good morning, everybody, and a huge welcome to ITC DIA in Barcelona. And I know that if you were at the launch event last night, then well done for getting here for the first event of the day. I just listening to this video for the opening video, not our own video, for the very first time just now makes me kind of quite, I guess, nostalgic for the times of the past. I was on the very first stage when DIA was taking place in Barcelona in 2016. And I was there again at the second event in 2017. So this is my first time back for 6 years. And I wanted to take the opportunity just to talk to you about something that I talked about then. So back in 2017, when Roger and Reggie very kindly invited me back onto the stage in Amsterdam at the time, I shared this quote with you. "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change." So at that time, I asked everybody if they knew who had coined that phrase, who had said that originally. I presume that there aren't many people here today who were back there in 2017. So who do you think said this? I think somebody said Charles Darwin. Did someone say Charles Darwin? Okay, loads of you said Charles Darwin. So I can definitely tell you that those of you who said Charles Darwin were either not back in Amsterdam in 2017 or you were not paying attention to me at the time. Because what I told you at the time is that actually Charles Darwin didn't say this. And that in fact, it was much more recent than Charles Darwin. And in fact, in 1999, USA Today, the US newspaper, coined this phrase. And for those of you who know anything about Charles Darwin, I can assure you he would never have used an expression that was as simple and straightforward as that. So the reason for sharing that quote with you back in 2017 was that I told you that you should not believe everything that you read and the incumbent knowledge. I told you that you should really begin to question things that you're told about. This time, I want to take the exact same expression and use it for the core reason of that expression. I want to use it to talk to you today about resilience, about how it is possible to be the survival of the fittest, what it is that it takes to do to become a successful, surviving business over many years. And I think that I feel well placed to have this conversation. So I told you that we've been around at least since 2016. In fact, this September will be our 11th anniversary, which means that ManyPets, or Bought by Many as it was originally known, predates the expression insurtech. And so what I want to talk to you today is about resilience and my perspective on resilience, my ideas about how to build resilience. And I think that resilience, frankly, has 3 core aspects to it. I think you need to have business resilience, team resilience, and personal resilience. And I am going to talk to you for a few minutes about each of these. And critically, I'm going to do them in the order in which you would normally expect to talk about them. Most people feel when we talk about resilience, particularly in today's economy, we talk about resilience about businesses. But I don't think that a business can have resilience if the teams behind it, the individuals behind the business, work together in resilient teams. And so I'm going to talk to you a bit about that too. And then finally, I'm going to talk to you about personal resilience. And I'm going to share with you some very personal stories that are for me and about me that gives you some sense of how I have built resilience. So I'm going to make this a very personal journey. I'm going to talk to you about ManyPets and the journey that we have been on. I'm going to talk to you about the teams that I have built at ManyPets. And then I'm going to talk to you about me. And I'm going to bring the whole thing back together again at the very end and hopefully give you a real sense of how we at ManyPets think about resilience. So first, let me talk about business resilience. I said that that's the top of the tree, and clearly that is an important part of today's economy. So the next slide that's on the screen is a slightly kind of cartoonized version of what might look like a typical company's cash flow position looking out over several years if you're in the insurtech sector. Right? And it's already had a few nods in the screen. Right? Now, I will tell you that to protect the innocent, there is a certain company who happens to be represented on stage here today whose cash flow position might well have looked like that about a year ago. Now, what you can see is that over on the very far left-hand side, we're in a very nice, healthy, strong position today. Lots of cash, lots of opportunities for growth. The problem is, if you look very far out to the right-hand side, and this is several years out, by the way, it looks like we're burning cash at a faster rate than we're able to generate it. Now, in a world where there are significant fundraising opportunities, where the equity markets are wide open and the debt markets are wide open, a very significantly scaled business with good, strong unit economics should have no problem with a cash flow projection position like this. The problem is that neither the equity markets nor the debt markets are open right now, at least not to the scale that a business of our size would need them to be. And so it is important that you build business resilience so that you can withstand whatever the world throws at you. And by God, has the world thrown a lot at us and our businesses in our space over the last 18 months. None of us could have expected to have foreseen the implication of the invasion of Ukraine, the knock-on implication on inflation, the implications on household income and cost of living crises, and of course the most recent issue, especially drawn to clear attention in the UK, the rising mortgage rates. And the implication of that on company finances is extreme. And none of us should pretend that we are immune to this, whether you are a large-scale insurer or a much smaller startup business. The world of the consumer, and by association our staff, because they are consumers in a different space, has been materially impacted by each of these world events and many others as well. And so for a business to build resilience, it means that the business needs to be able to withstand what the world throws at it, regardless of what that is. And so we have a horizon risk log, which creates a scenario for us where we spend time every quarter thinking about what might happen. Now, clearly we think about some upside in that scenario, but we spend a lot of time thinking about the downside risks. What is the issues that we would face if X happens? And the criticality of that in our business planning enables us to really think long and hard about how we convert this slide into one that looks like this. And that is exactly what we have been doing over the last 18 months. And the importance of that is that we really wanted to create a scenario where the gap between the bottom point of this low curve of what my CFO calls her smiley face chart and the zero line is significant. We call that our buffer. And we stress test that buffer for each of the different events that exists on our horizon scenario planning log. We want to make sure that we never are in a situation where we are forced into a scenario where we go back to where the cash flow line drops below zero. And so building proper resilience into your business and thinking long and hard about the what-if scenarios creates a very robust, scaled, dependable, stable business. And I would encourage each of you to think about this in the same way. I now want to talk about team resilience. And to do this, I'm going to lean on somebody called Patrick Lencioni. Patrick Lencioni was or still is, a very significant thinker in the concept of team and team structures and team stability. And he created these, as you can see here, 5 dysfunctions of a team. I want to talk about them very briefly, and then I'm going to focus on one. So the root cause, if you like, right at the very bottom of this pyramid, is that team members are unable to be vulnerable with one another. They cannot build mutual trust. And this waste of time and energy leads to defensive behaviors. Defensive behaviors create a scenario where individuals are reluctant to seek help or to seek assistance. And this gets into the scenario where they're incapable of unfiltered, passionate debate, and which leads to conflict avoidance and an artificial harmony. An artificial harmony, of course, is a really dangerous scenario for businesses to be in because you're not confronting each other with the issues that you need to enable you to be much more robust and scalable and critically resilient as a team. The next issue, as you move further up this pyramid, is that without conflict in the team, it is not easy for others to commit. And that doesn't mean that you need to agree and commit. Disagree and commit is also completely fine. But without conflict, there is no ability for proper, bought-in ability to commit and critically buy into decisions. The implication of this is that ambiguity prevails. Ambiguity is an enormously dangerous scenario. And as you move up to the 4th item on this list of accountability, if there is no commitment, then it's not possible to hold others to account because they haven't bought into the overall plan either. And when they haven't bought into the plan, you get to the end result where the results at the very top of the picture are not what you want them to be. The team does not become results-orientated. In fact, the team puts their own individual results above the importance of the team results and look after their own interests, and that's it. Now, what I want to do is that I want to take you on a little bit of a journey that we have been on as a team, as a leadership team at ManyPets, and I'm going to talk to you about just one of these. Clearly, this is a very big subject on its own. Very happy to talk to you about this afterwards if it's helpful, but I'm going to pick the very bottom. And in the very bottom item of trust, I asked my team at an away day that we had to answer this question on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm able to admit an error or make a mistake without fear of criticism. I did this using a little bit of tech, a little piece of software called Slido, because I wanted it to be anonymous. Right? We're in the space of creating trust. I don't want to break that trust by asking everybody to put their hands up and vote in the room. This were the results. So you can see that the vast majority of my team genuinely feel that they are able to admit an error or mistake without fear of criticism. Except for this issue over here. When I put the results up on the screen, you can see I shared the results in exactly this format. They were anonymized. There was silence in the room, a little bit of a gasp of horror. And we were all looking around the room thinking, who is this person who feels so worried about criticism that they're unable to admit an error? And the silence in the room was quite palpable. Each of us looking at each other, trying to work out who was this individual. And then a strange thing happened. One of the team members put up their hand and said, that was me. I voted too. I have to admit, I thought that 1 was the best. Now, clearly, that is a helpful indicator of being able to, and this is a completely true story, by the way. It is absolutely a great example of being able to admit an error. And finally, I want to talk about personal. Now, for those of you who are faint-hearted or a little bit squeamish, I would encourage you not to look at the next slide. My wife was very worried when I shared this slide deck with her a few days ago that I was sharing the next slide with you. But I told you I'm going to take you on a little bit of a personal story as well, and this is very much what the next piece is about. A really horrific thing happened to me a little over a year ago, about 13 months ago. I was on the receiving end. I was knocked off my bicycle, and I ended up being in hospital for 3 weeks. And the slide, this is a picture of me, by the way. Ignoring the kind of slightly cartoon character at the bottom of the screen, this is actually what the inside of my pelvis looks like. Now, what's kind of slightly weird right now is that there's now several hundred people in this room looking at my groin. There is nothing to see, I can absolutely assure you. But critically, what I want to talk to you about is resilience from a personal perspective. So when something unexpected happens to you, and I can assure you being knocked off my bike was genuinely unexpected, and having to go through a series of operations to get me back into the space that I'm in now, it is really important that you as an individual have a deep resilience in you. You can rely on your team to run a business when you are incapacitated, and at the same time, you are genuinely able to focus on yourself because you're not able to focus on the business and not able to focus on the team nor the business when you actually have to focus on yourself. What's the impact of that? And so to give you the good news, this is a picture from my Strava account taken a little over 2 weeks ago. It's a 100-mile cycle that I did to celebrate the anniversary of my second operation. And so I want to give you a sense that when you do build personal resilience, it is genuinely possible to be back in a space where you are feeling strong and robust yourself, and then you're able to bring that strength and robustness into the team environment, and through that, bring strength and robust team resilience into the business environment. And without focusing on these 3 tiers, it is not sensible or possible to create overall business resilience. Now, clearly, I'm not expecting each and every one of you to go through the same horrific experience that I went through to be able to get to really building your own personal resilience. And absent this terrible accident, how did I find resilience myself? And so I wanted to just share with you some things that I use for myself when things are not going my way at work, the way when we are finding a scenario where we're in conflict that we don't see a way through. And I would encourage you to have a picture in your mind of each of the things that I'm going to show you now so that this works for you too as an individual. So the first, for me, is architecture. I love beautiful things. I love looking at beautiful buildings. Clearly, this is Sagrada Familia, which is not a million miles from where we are now. So thank you very much for holding this conference in Barcelona, so I get to go check it out. But clearly, looking at beautiful things gives me an out-of-body experience and enables me to really think about other things that other people have achieved. Jazz is an important part. I find music enormously uplifting. And for those of you who don't know, this is a picture of Louis Armstrong, who is, in my opinion, one of the, if not the greatest, jazz all-time greats. To give you some sense of how much I think about him, this is also a picture of me and my dog, our black lab. His name is Satchmo. And to give you a sense of the connection between those two, for those of you who are not aware, Louis Armstrong's nickname was Satchmo. So we've taken this to a ridiculous extent and named our dog after it. And critically, if all else fails, there's always whiskey. So it's important to recognize that sometimes all else does fail and whiskey is important. But kind of flippantness aside, I wanted to come back to this story in the last minute or so of this conversation and to really I give you some sense in a very short few minutes of the criticality of building resilience in a multi-tiered way. I would encourage you to think about this over time. I would encourage you to think about this with your boards, with your colleagues, with your teams, and with yourself. How do you build resilience in you as an individual? How do you create a scenario where you are robust as an individual, as a team, and as a business so that you can withstand whatever the world throws at you? You know, I'm sincerely hoping that the next 12 months are much less terrible for the entire world than the last 12 months have been. But I'm not expecting that to be the case. It is great to have hope, but you also need to have realism. And with realism comes the need for resilience. And so I wanted to conclude by saying thank you very much indeed to Roger and to Reggie. Thank you very much to each of you for getting up and coming into the very first session that there is here today. It has been a great talking to you. I hope it's not another 7 years before I'm back up on this stage, but we'll have to ask you guys as to whether you thought this was useful or not. Many thanks indeed, and I look forward to seeing you all later on, perhaps over a whiskey. Cheers.